In the last balance patch, we got a buff on Cordelia. And with that, we are finally able to make perfectly safe teams that run reasonably fast. In this video, I will showcase two teams. One of them is going to be the fastest team that I was able to find. Unfortunately, for that one, you will need Martina, and the other one is going to be free to play. However, it is going to be a bit slower and a bit more difficult to run. Yes, I have seen the Shrumia guide on SF, however, my runes are nowhere near good enough to be able to actually run that, so I had like 96% success rate, and that is just not acceptable for me. So first, let's talk about Cordelia and what actually changed. Whenever she touches a monster, she will apply buff block for 2 turns. The fact that it blocks beneficial effects for 2 turns is super nice, because in SF, if she happens to die, you still get a full rotation where you can still finish the boss, and so you don't really need to put too much HP towards her. And then her attack power increases in proportion to attack speed. Now this scaling isn't all too big, but it means that she has pseudo speed scaling on all of her skills. Then skill 1, 75% chance to decrease attack bar, and skill 2 is 3 times decrease attack bar by 50%, and whenever the enemy has no attack bar, she will ignore defense. So basically this skill will reset the enemy's attack bar and do a lot of damage. Okay, now that we know what Cordelia does, I'll show you two teams that use her. Both should be perfectly safe. I did a lot of runs on both and it never failed once. They both use a different strategy. This is going to be the faster team. Unfortunately, you're going to need Martina for this one. And what are we talking about? We have Cordelia, she is going to be lapping the boss and one of the twins. Then we have Clara into Shaina to clear the waves. And then Martina plus Brandia to make sure that the boss is perfectly safe. So on trash waves, we clear them with Clara and Shaina. Then on the mid boss, we just do an insane amount of damage with the twins and Cordelia. And then on the final boss, we have Cordelia to buff block. And then we have Shaina teams up with Martina. So in case that Cordelia missed the buff block, we will steal all of the buffs on the boss and then defense break it. And then Cordelia once again to get a second chance on the buff block. And then once again, we strip it and steal all the buffs on the boss. So the boss will never have a defense buff and shield. And then Brandia will just one-shot the boss. There are many layers of safety to this. Double buff block into double strip into double defense break into a lot of damage, and then we finally nuke with Brandia. Right, so let's look at it in practice. Cordelia, Clara into Shaina to clear the wave, and then usually we will clear on the Cordelia's second turn here. We will need very good runes for that to happen, but even if that doesn't happen, the runs will just be slower. We're going to be wasting a bit of time on the Martina. And then for the final boss, buff block, defense break, lot of damage, and then we one-shot with Brandia. Let's go over the runes. So we have Rage Cordelia, as I said. Her attack power increases in proportion to speed. Right now she has 286 combat speed, let's call it 300, and the multiplier is 5x your speed. So basically it is as if she had plus 3000 attack. That's why we want to go for Rage, because we already have a lot of attack on her. And we have damage on wind, and whatever makes her skills hit hard. The accuracy that you're going to need on all of your units is going to be at least 24, because the boss has 40 resistance, which also means that thanks to Shaina passive, the twins don't need any accuracy. Then on the Clara we have triple fight set. These runes are pretty good, but you can go quite a bit lower on the damage on Clara, because you just need to put the side crystals below 30% HP and you're good. And here we have additional damage by attack. You might be tempted to go for like damage on wind, because this skill only hits 3 times, but even when it only hits 3 times, additional damage seems to be the way to go. If I swap this to damage on wind, it is just going to be doing significantly less damage. Then we have the Shaina, which is full damage on Rage. We have damage on wind and cob damage and more cob damage. As I said, Shaina gives 25% accuracy, so we don't need any accuracy on the twins. Then we have Martina, she is going to be on triple fight. We have damage on wind and cob damage and more cob damage. Once again, we don't need any accuracy because Shaina passive also applies to Martina. Then we have Brandia, we are going for double fight will. That is because the main way that you make this team run faster is going to be adding more damage to your Cordelia and your twins, because that way you just spend fewer turns on the mid boss. This is the speed tuning that we're going to be using. So we have Cordelia, she needs to move in the 5th tick, so that's going to be plus 165 speed if she's not on Swift, and if she is on Swift, it's gonna be 166 speed. And then Clara and Shaina have to go in the 9th tick, and Martina and Brandia in the 10th. If you're ever unsure or if the turn order isn't correct, I'm gonna link this speed tuning chart in the video description, and you can just put in whatever speeds you're running and it will tell you exactly where it's going wrong, and you can just play around with the speeds. Now, technically speaking, you don't even need a Brandia in this slot. The only nice thing about Brandia is that in case Cordelia misses the first buff block, you are getting a lot of debuffs on the boss, and Brandia is about the only unit that can one-shot in that case. However, in most runs, you don't need nearly as much damage to be able to kill the boss, so Hua or Crow will work in this slot just fine. Not only that, the best types of monsters for this slot would be monsters that increase the damage of all of the other monsters without ever actually taking a turn. And monsters that would fit that description would be Deborah, Oldong, or Lucifer. If you have one of those three, just plop them in here, and then your rounds are just going to be significantly faster because you're not wasting the time by the last monster taking a turn, and also you're not getting hit by the thunderbolts, which also takes quite a bit of time. This team will vary wildly with success rate and average times, depending on what kinds of runes you're using on your monsters. It will go anywhere between 23 to up to 28 seconds average, depending on what sets you decide to use on your monsters and your rune quality. I would first suggest that you put your Cordelia on Rage or Swift, and Brandia on Double Fight Will. And if that starts failing on you, first of all, try going for more damage on all of your units. That is going to be the best safety net. And if that doesn't work, you can switch your Cordelia to Triple Will. That way she will always get another chance to apply the buff block. And then put Brandia onto a Rage set. That way the runs will be slightly slower. We're talking going from 26 all the way down to like 28 seconds average, but if you cannot rune it like this, that one is going to be 100% safe even if your runes aren't as good as what I'm showcasing here. As I said, the average times this team will give you will vary wildly depending on what types of runes you put on your monsters. So here we have a super safe version where we go Triple Will on Cordelia and Rage on Brandia. I did 500 runs of that, so I'm pretty sure that this one never fails, and it was running 27 seconds. I was also running it with lower damage compared to the first version on basically all of my units, right? So this just has worse stats than this. This was failing a bit. We had 3 fails in 500 runs. The average was about the same. Then I was also running it a bit with just a tanky build on Cordelia, and I figured that's just making it run slower, so it was running 28 seconds average. And then we are arriving at the final version. That's the one that I showcased the runes for. We put Cordelia onto Rage Blade and then Brandia on Double Fight Will, and that one is running 26.2 seconds average, and I completely ran out of crystals and energy, so I cannot continue testing, but from what I've seen, it seems to be running safer and more consistently than all of the other versions. But now, let's say you don't actually have Martina, so what do you do in that case? We're going to have to overhaul the whole team. So instead of going for perfect AI to clear the waves with Clara and China, we are going to go a bit RNG with Lucian. So this team is obviously going to be a bit slower, but it is still going to be faster than the Agrios team, and as far as my testing goes, it is still perfectly safe. So we have Cordelia, then Lucian, then Cordelia again, and then we only have one stripper, and that's gonna be Lauren. The idea is that if you miss the first buff block, you get another chance, and after you're pretty much sure that the buff block is landed, then you go ahead and try to strip it. We have 2 damage dealers. One is going to be doubling up as wave clear, so that's gonna be Rauk, and one is going to be heaviest single target damage. Now, the Martina team was safe because the boss basically never got a turn because it was always just dead. And here we're employing a similar strategy. We are just going to make sure that the boss doesn't move just by the sheer amount of attack bar decreasing effects. So we basically have 4 units that will decrease the boss's attack bar, and the boss himself will never actually take a turn. So let's look at how it actually runs. So in an ideal scenario, we have Cordelia into Lucian using just amputation magic and clearing the wave instantly, but you get like 3 or 4 second penalty. Then on the mid boss, we start by decreasing attack bars and ignoring a bunch of defense, and then we just mercilessly kill the boss in 1 cycle. Usually the enemies don't ever take a turn, but even if they do, not a big deal. The run is just going to be a bit slower. And then on the final boss, we apply buff block, defense break, team up, and after that the boss will usually just have low enough HP for Hua to just finish him off. And even if Hua doesn't kill the boss fully, we're using a bunch of will sets, so we're not getting stunned by the crystals, and usually 2 rotations are just going to be enough to kill the boss. So rune-wise, once again, we have triple will on Cordelia, so even if we miss all the buff blocks in the first cycle, we still have a chance to recover the run in the second cycle. Hua, same as Brandia, she's just on single will because the crystal will counter before whatever takes a turn. And Lauren also has double will because we are relying on the Lauren pushback to make sure that the boss doesn't take a turn. Because if the boss just starts taking a turn, you're just dead, right? So we don't want that to happen. So we have Lucian on triple fight, 100 crit rate, 24 accuracy. We have a bunch of damage on wind and whatever makes his skill 3 hit hard. Cordelia, 24 accuracy, 165 speed. We go for damage on wind and then a bunch of single target damage. Rauk is just a triple fighter and then a bunch of damage on wind and co-op damage and more co-op damage. Lauren is gonna be double will fight, and we have damage taken from wind, and the right side is pretty much irrelevant. Once again, 24 accuracy, and Hua is on a very similar build to Brandia from the previous team. So we have rage will, so that she doesn't get stunned by the crystal, and then damage on wind, and skill 1 crit damage. This team has a slightly different speed tuning, so we have the Cordelia at 165 speed, that's the same, but this time all of the other units have to move in the 10th tick, which means that Lucian has to be at most plus 39 speed. And then the lowest we can go is 150 combat speed, so that means that your Hua will have to be at least plus 30 speed. Unfortunately, this team is going to be about 3 seconds slower, but this team does scale very well with just more damage on all of your units. So with better runes, you can probably cut this time down to around 28, maybe even 27 seconds. Overall, I made about 150 runs with this team composition with various different runes, and I have not yet seen it fail. Now I'm gonna show you a bunch of runs of both of the teams. Once again, if you like this type of content, hit the like button, let me know in the comment section down below the video, and consider subscribing. Should you have any questions about this team or any other team, feel free to join my Discord channel. The link to it is in the video description.